Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of News in Depth, where we take a closer look at the news and issues from Brevard County that you need to know about. I'm your host, Adam Lowenstein. On today's show, we'll look at a growing component of the statewide and Space Coast economies, tourists enjoying our unique natural environment. Along the Atlantic coast, activities range from birdwatching to hiking to kayaking. So stay tuned for that. We'll examine why 4 decades after our first landing on the moon, some conspiracy theorists still believe the whole thing was nothing more than a Hollywood-esque fakery created on a soundstage. And yes, we'll give you another video tip for getting your home and property ready for tropical storms. But first up today, we wanted to talk about some more serious issues facing our space industry here and now. Over the weekend, NASA was counting down to try to launch one of the remaining 8 space shuttle missions that are on its schedule before the program ends in about 18 months. Our space team got a chance to talk with industry and local government officials about the future of the space shuttle workforce, as well as the rockets and spaceships being designed to replace the aging shuttle fleet. Here's the report, filed from the rooftop of the Florida Today Blockhouse at Kennedy Space Center.
I'm Todd Halverson of Florida Today, and NASA is coming up to a critical crossroads. The Obama administration is doing a sweeping review of the agency's human spaceflight programs, and the shuttle fleet is going to be retired at the end of next year. Lisa Rive of the Brevard Work Force Development Board talked with us about what that means to the workforce here at the Kennedy Space Center. Lisa, how bad is it going to be?
Hi, Todd. Well, that is up to a lot of different details that just haven't all quite come together yet. For one thing, with a new NASA administrator, we're not sure what kinds of goals he's going to set with NASA and what kinds of work products might come down here to Florida. When we did our Aerospace Workforce Outlook report a couple of years ago, we actually estimated that there'd be about 3,500 people without jobs. However, right now what we're hearing is that a lot of those work packages are not coming to Florida, or they've been pushed out so far that the gap is really going to be much further than just a few years. It's going to be 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. So that's a huge loss. You know, you can't keep people on for that kind of a time frame. So right now we're into our 3rd phase of an Aerospace Workforce Outlook report, and we really do expect those numbers to climb to possibly even double.
To double 3,500. So that would be even worse than the situation was after the Challenger accident back in January 1986. I think the numbers then were 2,500, 3,000 people were, out of a job, within weeks. And after the Apollo program, I don't think it'll be as bad as after the Apollo program when 20,000 people here in Brevard County all of a sudden were jobless.
Right.
We don't expect it to be that bad. The work projects you're talking about, I guess that would be like I know NASA was looking at bringing the final integration and assembly of the Altar lunar lander.
Correct.
Here to KSC. What's up with that?
Correct. At this point, that is not on the table as slated for coming to KSC. It really is one of those things that when the contractors bid on it, they'll be bidding the best price and the best location. Some may want it here in Florida and some may not. Of course, we're rooting for Florida. The best thing about this is that it's not like it's a sudden thing like Challenger was. We know about this. We've been planning and working on this for a couple of years now. And so we are preparing that workforce for this transition. And we're doing our best to make sure that they'll be able to remain in Florida, remain in Brevard, hopefully, and have good, consistent jobs that can take them into their own career future.
The first of NASA's next generation Ares rockets is actually being built up right now in the 52-story vehicle assembly building here at the Kennedy Space Center. It's set to be launched a little later this year, and we talked to Joe Oliva of manufacturer ATK about when that launch is going to go and why it's so important to America's future in space. Joe, you have a model of the Ares-1X there. Why don't you tell us what this beastie looks like, and I believe you're actually stacking in the VAB now?
That's right, Todd. As you said, we have a model of what this vehicle will look like. In fact, all these pieces that build up the entire Ares-1X test flight are actually all sitting in the VAB next to us right now. We are again. This is to model what the Ares-I will look like. It follows basically the outer mold line of the Ares-I. Differing from the Ares-I, though, we are flying a heritage 4-segment rocket motor that then on top of that is what we call a 5th-segment simulator. Combined with the rocket motor, that will simulate the size of the 5-segment rocket motor that the Ares-I will use.
That'll be the first stage of the rocket.
And that will be the propulsion of the first stage. The remaining part of the first stage goes up and includes a forward skirt and a forward skirt extension in frustum, which both allow us to have the electrical systems for the first stage and also allow us to have the parachute system for recovery of the first stage after separation. And then above that, on this rocket, we have a simulated upper stage, just in this case, just made of steel with some ballast in there to simulate the weight of the cryogenic fuel that will reside in the actual Ares-I, and then a simulated Orion capsule and launch abort system on top. Again, all simulated for this test flight. Currently, as you had mentioned, that we have on the MLP stacked today the aft segment of the rocket motor and the aft center segment. So half of this rocket is stacked on the MLP. Later on here this next week, we will complete the assembly of the rocket motor. Also of very interesting over in the VAB is we have a very large stack coming from the bottom of the 5th segment simulator all the way up to the first couple of segments of the upper stage. We call that Super Stack 1. That is sitting there in the VAB ready to go on top of the motor once that's done, and then the rest of this upper stage and Orion are in 4 additional pieces, again ready to be mechanically stacked. We expect all that to happen here by early this next month.
NASA is pursuing Project Constellation, which is a program aimed at developing Ares rockets, Orion spacecraft, and Altair lunar landers to return American astronauts to the moon, hopefully by the year 2020. Mike Kahn of manufacturer ATK told us what type of progress is being made in the program right now.
Yeah, on Ares-I, we've made great progress on the first stage. We have our actual first stage development motor in the test stand ready to fire at the end of August 25th. We've done many parachute tests. You know, the boosters are recovered just like the shuttle boosters are, and we've done 2 or 3 parachute tests. We've done a stage separation test. We've done an igniter test. The igniter is actually the same one as the shuttle igniter. We're just verifying that it'll work in the 5-segment motor, and the motor is all assembled. This test will be similar to a test we did in 2003 when we tested a 5-segment motor. That design was slightly different. That was more for a shuttle configuration. This is for an Ares configuration, so there's some slight differences. And so we look forward to having you and others come out and join us at the end of August for that first full-scale test.
So this will be out in Utah, obviously, and this big, long 5-segment solid rocket motor is going to be laying on its side in the middle of the mountains out there, and boy, they'll light it off and it'll look like what?
It'll look like a shuttle motor.
It'll look like a shuttle motor.
The motor burns for 2 minutes just like a shuttle motor. It'll put out about 3.6 million pounds of thrust, which is the shuttle motor puts out just a little over 3.2 million pounds of thrust, and it burns for the same amount of time. Most of the hardware is the same. The cases are the same, the igniter is the same, the aft skirt's the same, most of the nozzles are the same. We open the throat up a little bit to maintain the internal pressure that the motor currently sees for shuttle. And you'll see the motor horizontal for 2 minutes, and a couple hours after the test, you'll get to come up and take a look at it.
It'll make a big billowing cloud of exhaust for certain. It's a pretty impressive spectacle to see. This will be the first 5-segment motor firing involved in the Ares program. Can you give us an idea of how many tests you guys require to certify the 5-segment solid rocket motor for Ares-I flight?
We have 3 development motors that we'll be testing, actually 4 development motors, 3 after this test, and then after the development program we'll go into the qualification program, and we'll have all the qualification tests done before the Ares-I flight, Orion 1, in 2014-2015 timeframe. We fire motors once or twice a year for the shuttle program. We've been doing that for years. And what's good is we're going to be leveraging a lot of the investments made over the last 20-25 years in the shuttle motors into the Ares first stage booster. You know, the Ares-I is all about crew safety. How do you make the vehicle as safe as you can for the crew? How do you make it 10 times safer than anything else out there? How do you take a single propulsion system that's proven its reliability and then put another engine on top, so you have one engine on top of one engine, and make it as simple as you can and provide a safe ride for the crew? And so we've leveraged a lot of the improvements we put in place over the last 20 years in our facility and a lot of the activities down here. And like I said earlier, a lot of the hardware is exactly the same, and a lot of the interfaces are the same. And when we go forward to Ares-V, you'll see a lot of the same similarities in that hardware as well.
A presidential panel is reviewing NASA's plans for the Ares rocket and the Apollo-style Orion space capsules, and they're also looking at alternatives. We'll be there when they report to the president next month. From the Kennedy Space Center, this is Todd Halverson reporting for Florida Today.
Big decisions await NASA and local officials about dealing with the transition from the space shuttle to a future spaceship. Our space and business reporters continue to follow the story, and we'll keep you posted on what's next. Now clearly, that space shuttle you saw in the background of our last segment was not on a soundstage. But how about the first moon landing in 1969? Believe it or not, 40 years after Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in front of millions of television viewers, there are still people who think the government faked all of it. It's one of those stories that lives on. Search Google for moon hoax, and you can find millions of pages of articles, photos, and videos. This week, we talked to some people familiar with the stories and others who think they know how some of these wild ideas got rolling.
Well, there are people on this planet that think we really didn't go to the moon, and probably this is one of the pictures that keeps that hoax going. It's a picture of myself on the moon standing with 2 astronauts. And this photograph was taken while the company I was working for, who built the spacesuits, was simulating what was going on the lunar surface, and we did it for CBS News so they could show it while the astronauts were on the surface of the moon, and would show what the astronauts were doing. We actually did it in a hangar at Grumman, Bethpage, Long Island, and in that hangar we had a mock-up of the lunar module. And we had test pilots in dummy spacesuits that my company supplied to CBS. And so some of the test pilots from Grumman studied what was being done on the moon, and they were able to simulate exactly what was going on. So while I was breaking the action, I stood on the surface with them beside the American flag, and of course in civilian clothes, while they were standing on the surface of the moon, which was really inside of like I said, a hangar in Grumman, Bethpage. We did it because in the first couple of flights there were no cameras on the lunar surface to show what the astronauts were actually doing. They only had one camera on Apollo 11 that was focused to show Neil Armstrong fuzzily stepping on the lunar surface, and it wasn't a very good camera at all. So later on, when they got the lunar rover, then they had cameras on the surface of the moon that could show exactly what they were doing. So we were simulating what they were doing because there were no cameras to show what they were doing at the time.
The coming weeks will feature a lot of looking back at the 1969 moon landing. Florida Today has a new website where you can share pictures and memories of that time with others. The site is called Moon Landing Memories, and you can find it at floridatoday.com/moonlanding. Now, local development and tourism officials are hoping to capitalize on the growing popularity of ecotourism, which is a $3.1 billion industry statewide. One area of focus for them is sport fishing. They hope to make Brevard County a world-class fishing area. They're trying to boost charter fishing on the ocean and foster new hotspots for bass fishing in Viera and Palm Bay, where separate flooding projects over the next few years will create up to 17,000 acres of fishing and boating territory. One man has taken a hands-on approach to helping this effort. Let's meet him.
Every fishing rod is pretty much constructed the same way. You pick a blank, and you mount your grips and your reel seat on first, and that's done based on using a spine. You have to find the spine of the blank and mount it on the correct axis for what type of a rod it is. And then everything that's done on it is done with thread. This particular rod that I'm doing is all black because that's what the customer requested. But anytime you see a rod that's got any kind of ornate colors to it, all of that is done with thread. This is one of the last things that really maintains the same. The way I build a rod today and the way somebody built a rod 35 years ago really isn't that much difference. The quality of the components that I'm using, like this particular guide that I'm using, is a Fuji silicone carbide. I mean, the material in the ring is the hardest material that you can use, and that makes it dissipate friction very well. So this particular rod that I'm building is a butterfly jigging rod for a customer that lives in New Jersey, and he fishes for yellowfin tuna up there a lot, and the vertical jigging has been very popular over the last 10 years. And I'm building this with a Seeker blank and with Fuji silicone carbide guides. And this thing that I'm holding in my hand is called a bobbin, and it keeps the spool of thread where I can control it by squeezing it here and adding tension. And the old way was you pinched it with like that with your fingers, and that's the quickest way to get arthritis. And I plan on doing this for a while, so I came up with a better system. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm doing a trim ring on the outside of the guide, and these are the little ornate things that you see on a rod, and most people don't even realize that they're thread. So I started that, and I wrap it out forward like this, and then I put this little piece of thread under here so I can pull the back end of it through. And then once I get it to the desired length, I cut it. I carry a lot of reels that I believe that people are going to use, but really in reality, most of the reels that I sell, I get as I need them because I'm building them their fishing rods, and you can wait for that because it takes me a month or a month and change to build a fishing rod. So I order the reels. I sell a lot of Shimano reels. I also sell Newell, which is a brand from California. Pretty much, I put the outfits together for people. So I have a lot of guys that will bring me, an order for their entire boat. I just outfitted Eddie Dwyer's boat, the Ticket. I did a boat called Chase and Tail. I did all their rods, and I do an entire set, trolling rods, bottom rods, jigging rods, casting rods, everything. Everything matches, and everything is done to the right specifications for what it is that they're going to be fishing for. Yeah, originally when I first started, I thought about getting a sticker made with the logo, and I had mentioned it to a few of my customers, and a lot of them said to me, no, I really like the fact that there's a hand-drawn insignia on every single rod. It kind of gives it kind of a personal touch.
You can read more about the growth of ecotourism locally and in Florida on our website, floridatoday.com. Finally today, get the popcorn and dim the lights. We have another in our series of hurricane season how-to videos. We're well into the 2009 storm season, and tropical activity could start picking up any day now. So videographer Tim Walters has prepared a piece about your pre-storm checklist and your home. Take a look.
Documenting your possessions will help speed payment of an insurance claim. Videotape or photograph each room. Detail what's inside closets, dressers, and storage areas. If you're using a video camera, zoom in and take detailed shots of items, stating where you got them and how much you paid for them. If you're using a still camera, keep a detailed list of prices and purchase locations. Make 2 copies of your photographic or video documentation and store them in a safe place away from your home. For more hurricane how-tos, visit floridatoday.com.
You can find a whole list of those videos on our storm season website at floridatoday.com. That's our show for this week, everyone. We'll be back next Tuesday with more about the stories and people of the Space Coast. And pictures and sounds will go beyond the news. For Today in Brevard, I'm Adam Lowenstein. See you next week.